let's dive into it, shall we? It's kind of a big topic here. What
Yeah.
can you start for me for the audience, just level setting, like what is decision fatigue? What do we mean when we say that phrase?
Well, to me, it's what happens when your brain becomes overloaded from having to make too many decisions. It's normal, but I think for caregivers, and I know you could relate to this, Matt, when you're exhausted and just drained, even small decisions can feel big. And that's what wears us out. So that's, my loose definition of decision fatigue.
It feels very relatable.
Yeah.
You just the way you're talking about that brings me right back. And you kind of hinted at a few of these, but like, what are some of the telltale signs, or maybe subtle signs, just signs in general?
Yeah. And I think this definitely happened for me. At some point after having so many decisions, either, with my loved one or with doctors making health plan decisions, I just didn't want to make decisions. So one of the things I found myself doing was avoiding putting things off, even small ones that I could have just knocked out. I was just overwhelmed. I think I also probably did this a lot, which is sometimes I did what was easiest instead of maybe what was the best, just because it was the path of least resistance. And I was just too tired to think more deeply about it. And I also think that you find that you have a hard time staying focused on things or concentrating. It's like your head is going back and forth with, what about this? And how about if I do it that way? So I found myself kind of ruminating about the decision to make. And even if I already made it, I was like, I wonder if that was the right way to go. So those were some of the things that I think can be common signs.
Yeah, I there's a few things I want to come back to you on there based on what you mentioned. So I share your like I guess what I heard was sort of avoidance is one of those signs, right? Like
Yeah.
you just don't want to make the decision. And I just want to call out this isn't like I'm the king of procrastinators, or I was when I was a teenager, let's say. So it's different than sort of run of the mill procrastination, right?
Yeah.
It's like and how it's different, like, I don't have a scientific, like, description of that, but just from my own personal experience, it just like, making this decision just it wasn't like, I'll do that later," or "I have time," or "I don't feel like doing this right now, I wanna go do that," and, like, it wasn't that type of procrastination, right? It was like, like, making this decision feels like climbing Mount Everest.
Yeah.
I can't do that right now, so I'm gonna avoid it. Like, so there's a difference there, right? Do you agree with that
Yeah,
statement?
I think what you're speaking to is capacity. Like
Yeah,
you just don't have the capacity to do that. And even like you're saying, I'd rather do something else. Well, you don't even have the energy to do the something else. So
correct.
it's another way to kind of maybe
Yeah.
distinguish.
Yeah. And it's definitely kind of like a if you know, you know sort of thing. But like so much of what we talk about in these sessions, like for instance, the audience, I'm guessing, they see the title of this session when they register and they're not like, "Oh, what is decision fatigue?" Like it's pretty intuitive, right?
Right. Right.
But like so it's just so hard when you're in the midst of a caregiving experience to see things like how you're feeling, to see these things for what they really are, right? You're just
Yeah.
in it. And so that's the reason we step back in these sessions and talk about these topics, so that as we're experiencing decision fatigue in this case, we can put a name to it, we can recognize it, and hopefully use some of the tips we'll talk about shortly here to try and navigate it, right? So
Yeah.
that's why we're here on a monthly basis. Another point, a sign for me that wasn't obvious immediately was, it was kind of at the intersection. Sometimes it was irritability, like I was just like a jerk. Like I was just
Yeah.
not I was not cool to people
Yeah.
around me when I was feeling this way, and I didn't initially connect irritability, me feeling irritated, to, like, just being exhausted from making decision after decision after decision. So and sometimes it's sort of borderline anxiety, like, I knew I was feeling irritable, like, I was being a jerk, but
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do about it, and, like, that made me anxious, so I say that just to the signs aren't always obvious, right? And sure, there could have been other things, like decision fatigue wasn't the only thing I was being weighed down by at that time. Like, there was probably a whole host of things related to my caregiving experience and life in general that were causing me to be irritable. But like, it was hard for me to make that link when I was in the middle.
Yeah, and I think you just brought something up that I was realizing and maybe didn't realize it at the time, but we always think of like the physical that makes us the most tired. But really what takes the vast amount of our energy is our brain. Thinking takes a lot of energy and we take it for granted. We could do so many things with our brains, and but this constant having to make a choice or a decision added to I haven't slept and I'm lifting people or, I'm doing all the things in my daily life, but really that using your brain depletes you. So you
Mhm.
do need to recognize if you had known that back then that like I feel irritable because I'm thinking too much, you might start thinking of ways to reduce that, what they call cognitive load.
Yeah, right, right. So we have a question here. So I'm just going to read it. So is it the inability to make decisions because there are so many? And I would say yes, partly because your brain is pulled into so many different directions because of, each decision is a different direction and you're just stretched. It could be, and I'm speaking from my personal experience and just talking with other caregivers, but it could be just the constant wave. You get depleted, as you say, Sheila, from just the constant wave of decisions that you're making. It's multiple, and anybody, I think a lot of people here in the session today are caring for a loved one or loved ones. And, I'd imagine people can relate to that, right? Like as caregivers, we're constantly making decisions. Some are small and seemingly trivial, some are massive and everything in between, but they all sort of deplete you, is what I'm
Mhm.
hearing you say, Sheila.
Yeah, and I think just to add on to that, Matt, and we're going to be talking about why this affects caregivers so much, but it is the number of decisions, but I also feel that there's a particular emotional weight of
Mm,
each one that is specific to caregiving that differentiates. It's because if you were in a situation where you were just taking care of yourself and making decisions for you, I think there would be less of an emotional weight, and so it
mm,
just adds to that, taxing your brain and your body at this point.
yeah. Let me give you an example. Like, I'm glad you mentioned emotional weight. And I have the benefit of hindsight now because I'm not caregiving at the moment. But I had almost a visceral reaction when you just said that, because I remember so vividly in a given morning, right? But given 90 minutes, let's say, when my father-in-law, who was living with Lewy body dementia, we had a pretty standard routine. It worked well for him, but he'd spend an hour, hour and a half or so at the kitchen table. Like some of that was eating his breakfast, some of it was just like, you know, call it engagement, right? We're trying to have a conversation and talk with him and just, make him part of the household, right? And as time went on and his ability to communicate verbally got less and less and less and less, and his affect flattened more and more and more, it was, we used that time to obviously, you know, have him have a meal and get the nourishment he needs, but also to try and really engage him and like with the world around him. And it was a smaller world at that point. It was pretty much our house, but in that 90 minutes, there could have been 5, 10 decisions like that. I'm trying, like, maybe this will get a spark, or maybe that will get a spark.
Mhm,
Let's read the sports page, Steve. Let's look at the digital picture frame and talk about what we're seeing. Let's do this. Let's do that. So just that 90-minute like stretch there, right?
mm,
Like countless decisions, and with each one comes an emotional weight because I'm really just desperately wanting that spark. I'm wanting that second of eye contact. I'm wanting that smile or flash of a smile. I'm wanting that just momentarily light up from him. And so it just that it sparked that thought when you mentioned that way, because those are decisions seemingly small if you just looked at them, objectively, but each one was so, they were heavy, right? They were
yeah.
heavy.
Yeah, that's a good word.
So,
And yeah, you hit on that because I think that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves when our decisions are affecting someone that we really care about. You don't want to make a mistake about a decision that affects someone else. So that's one of the reasons I know we're going to be talking a little bit more about why this, affects caregivers the most. But you just touched on one. Some of the other ones that come to mind for me are like, well, you're trying to make decisions with missing information. Maybe you don't
Mhm.
have all the details from the insurance plan, or you haven't heard back from the doctor about something, or when the PT team is going to come in. I mean, that is like you're trying to make this decision by piecing together information that you don't really have. That is stressful. That's like,
Yes.
how do I go from
So
there?
yes, 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 a million times yes. And in fact, I would take it a step further and say the majority of these decisions you're making that aren't like, hey, how can I engage the person I'm caring for? Like I was just talking about, the majority of these decisions we're making in this gray area, this
Yeah.
fog, and some of that gray area, some of that fog comes from our starting point, like how we're entering that situation to make that decision. We're tired, we're stressed, all of that we talk about all the time. But the bigger thing is like there's so little certainty in any of it.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's just especially when you think about some of the bigger decisions around like the biggest, like does my loved one stay at home or would it be better to go to a congregate living community of some sort?
Hmm.
Or should we trade this medication for that medication or
Yeah.
any of it? Like there's none of those scenarios have have an abundance of certainty. Let's just say that. So you're
Yeah.
you're doing the best you can, trying to make the best decision you can with the limited information you have. A million times, yes. Thank you for saying that. Sheila.
Yeah, and I think even to add on to that is that even if you have an idea of which way you'd wanna go, then you have to take into account that maybe your siblings or family members have a different opinion, or 2 different doctors have a different opinion, your specialist versus your PCP. So, I mean, this just gets so hard for you trying to find some stable ground. Like you said, there's missing information, and then when you do find information, sometimes you're getting different opinions about which way to go. So hard.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we did plan to talk about why this is so intense or sort of unique for family caregivers because everyone, whether you're a caregiver or not, at some point or another, you know, we experience decision fatigue. I think we've sufficiently hit on sort of what makes this a little bit different, a little bit more intense, acute, whatever word we want to use for somebody in a caregiving experience. So let's talk about what we can do to beat this or to limit its impact in some way because there is no magic wand to do that, but I think again like we talk about often, there are little things that we can be doing that you might on face value say, well, how is that going to help? That these little things can add up and make things just a little bit easier and like progress over perfection every time, especially in caregiving. And like
Yeah.
some of these little things can help, can, can add up to making this easier. So what are
Mhm.
some initial thoughts, Sheila, on how people can sort of manage this decision fatigue?
I think what worked for me, first of all, was to take a look at the things you're making a decision on every single day. Like there are things that you get up and you are making a decision about, okay, what day is it? What medication am I giving? That kind of thing. Or what am I going to make for breakfast? Or, those kinds of things. You could reduce that by creating a rule for that decision so you don't even have to think about it. And what I mean is like, medication management. So you can either have a chart and you could list write it down, or you can have a pill organizer. And that just takes out that need to make a decision about it. It's Monday, here's the pile, or I can check it off the note on the refrigerator. Same thing for me, it was meals that was such a headache. And it sounds like a real headache also to put together a plan for meals. But I'll
Mm,
tell you, it's really nice just to look at a list and say, "Oh, it's Monday, we're having this." And that's what we
mhm,
always have on Mondays, and I don't have to think about it. So to me, that was the most important is sort of setting a rule around those decisions that you're making all the time anyway. Cut that
mm.
off your brain.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, and that's I think a sort of common thread through a lot of the things that I would suggest or try. going back to my example uh, a couple of minutes ago about the smaller decisions about things to try and get that spark from my father-in-law. And when we, at the point in which we brought help into the home from the outside, we made a list of, it was part of something bigger, but there was a list of things to do with Steve in
Yeah, that's a
different
great idea.
scenarios, and I wound up using that like, it took my need to think out of it. Not
Mhm.
always, like, sometimes you go through the list and nothing works,
Yep.
and I'm saying, Darn, I wanna see him smile, I wanna just I wanna see that little spark, so I'm gonna keep going," and then, you get back into it, but having the list in general, it sort of made it really easy. Speaking of lists, and this is so old school and just analog, but for the bigger decisions, the things that I didn't just anything like just bigger decisions, right? Like the types of decisions where there wasn't any certainty, as we were talking
Yep.
about. Like it sounds so simple, but for me, it was really, really helpful, which was like literally getting pen and paper or pencil and paper and writing down a few things about the decision, why it needed to be made.
Yep.
Right. So like that helped me because I had a tendency to sort of lose sight of the purpose, like, you get so tunnel visioned, like,
Sure.
or I did anyway, it was hard to keep perspective. So,
Right.
why writing down and the actual for me, not for everyone maybe, but the actual act of writing down, and this goes back to when I was a kid in school, like, studying when I was studying for something, I had to write something down, and, like, it helped me retain the information, helped me
Yeah.
process it, whatever it did, whatever was going on, that worked for me, and that held true in this scenario. So writing down why we need to make this decision and then writing down what the options were. And again, I can't stress like actually writing them down was I think part of the thing that was helpful for me. And then sort of putting those options in buckets, pros and
Yeah.
cons, like there's no rocket science in anything that I'm saying here, but it helped me. Really what it did when it comes down to it is it made making that decision, whatever it was, achievable, seem achievable,
Mhm.
feel
Mhm.
achievable. And it wasn't like always the case, especially with the bigger decisions that I'd sit down, write a few things down and say, okay, I got it. I'm making this decision. No, these, especially the big ones, they take time.
Right.
You want to sleep on it, as it were, and all that. But like to get me off the mark, that really helped.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I do the same thing. Getting things down on paper always help me, and especially those big decisions. You mentioned living arrangements and what to do. That sounds like such a big thing, right? But if you can break that down into small steps and just start jotting it down. Okay, let's start with what are we going to do? Well, what do we need? Like what
Mhm.
are your loved ones' needs? And then once that's done, and you could do that over a period of a week. You could just write one thing down at a time. Then you move on to, well, what's available? What are my options? Then it
Mhm.
might be what's affordable. So it's just like one thing after another, step by step, you're inching closer. And I love that you said that earlier. But, I've always heard the phrase done is better than perfect. So you just get one thing done today toward this big decision and don't worry about it being perfect. You can go back and change your minds later. But this idea of just breaking it down, writing it down. I love that one. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Something else I really like that you put in our pre-show notes was scheduling time to make that decision. So a little bit of a slippery slope because it could be easy, and I'm thinking of me here, but it could be easy to schedule something and then kick the can down the road. But I really the point I think you're getting at is like getting tackling decision A when you're rested and
Yeah.
feeling, feeling strong, for lack of a better word, right? Like it's
Yeah.
never a good thing to be, pigeonholed into a position where you're having to make a decision or you're forcing yourself to make a decision when you've gotten 1 hour of sleep and nine other things to do, right? So I like the idea of scheduling it too, with the caveat that we, you know, do our best to hold ourselves accountable. And maybe I would combine, like maybe it's like, okay, I'm gonna schedule 30 minutes tomorrow morning or whenever it is when I feel while I have my coffee to sketch out this decision. And maybe
Mhm.
it's like writing things down like we were talking about. Another thing I really liked on your list was and again, may seem obvious. I needed the reminder when I was in the midst of it, but asking your healthcare professional or if you know people who've had a similar experience, asking them, right?
Yeah,
Like just that, and you're not gonna just say, "Hey, doctor so and so, what should I do here?" and then just rubber stamp what they say and do it.
right.
Uh, but it it's like a kickstart for you.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of you don't have to start from the very beginning on your own, and it just gets I don't know, it lightens the load a little bit.
Yeah.
Speaking of lightening the load, I also think we need to, as we always do in these sessions, remind you to ask for help, to share that load, assign very specific tasks to other people. If there's anything that someone can take off of your list, please don't be afraid to ask them. You cannot do it all, and especially when you're feeling this overwhelmed.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, agree totally, and one other thing that I don't that you had on your list before the show, good enough decisions versus perfect.
Yeah.
We've kind of talked around this a little bit, but particularly in these decisions when there is no certainty on either side, or there's little certainty, when you're in that gray area, yeah, I can't this is really, really hard. I found this very, very difficult, and I'm thinking of a massive life decision when my mom finally when we transitioned her to a memory care community. Like I just that was a decision. That's something that took lots of different dimensions, took months, but that's a really good example in my case, right? Like it's just some of these decisions are so difficult, and it's so natural for us as the principal making the decision as a primary caregiver to want perfection
Yeah.
because we love the person we're caring for in most cases. Like they are love's an understatement, right? It's family and most of the time. So it's totally natural to want perfection, but it's not always productive.
Right. Right.
And
Perfection is not productive.
and I like the way you just phrased it, good enough in our notes
Mm.
because it ties to something else you said is not all decisions need to be permanent. They're not
Right.
cast in stone when we make them. Like we can
Mhm.
adjust, right? And we're as family caregivers, we're doing the best we can. You're doing the best you can when you make this decision. Like give yourself permission to make a decision that you feel is good enough, not
Yeah,
necessarily perfect. So,
I bet.
oh my gosh, with that, we're at the bottom of the hour. So, wow, that went by quickly. Sheila, what are your parting thoughts for the group here?
If you're feeling this decision fatigue, it's a sign that you're caring an awful lot. So we're always encouraging you to give yourself a little grace, lean on others, and see if you could really try to be as kind to yourself as you are to the person you're caring for. That's really what it comes down to. It's such a difficult time.
Indeed, indeed. I I'll just echo that sentiment. I don't really have anything to add. I think this is just really hard. Little things can add up, even if you think, well, how's this going to help or how's that going to help? If someone who's been through it or truly understands what you're going through throws out a suggestion, it's worth a try. It's my
Yeah.
position, like my point of view. So, because these little things add up. So, we'll be doing this again on the 30th of July. So a little more than a month from now, we're going to be talking about caregiving and chronic illness. So, tools for the long haul is what we'll be focused on. But hope you can join us then. Hope you found this helpful. Sheila, as always, thank you,
Thank you.
and thanks everybody for being here. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.